Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, whatever time of day it is, and whatever day it is. Thank you for listening to another episode of AJH Politics. It is May 19th, year 2025, and this is episode 7, and we are going for at least a year, and we are going to talk about Kansas Senate Bill 29. So before I get into that, I do apologize for any of the ums or background noises or any of the other professional editing issues. Um, and I will also just issue the fact that this is for people of voting age, although I don't think there's anything too controversial about this particular topic. It's a nice PG-13 topic, or G-rated, really. Hopefully there's no vulgarity, but there's your warning. So, yeah, let's get started talking about Senate Bill 29. All right, so there you can see the short title as published by the kansaslegislator.gov website. And it states, well, this is substitute for Senate Bill 29 by Committee on Public Health and Welfare, removing the authority of the county or joint board of health or local official to prohibit public gatherings when necessary for the control of infectious or contagious disease. And what else do I have in my notes here? This is going to go into law this summer. As you can see down there, the veto was overridden in both the State House and the State Senate. Looks 86 to 38 and 31 to 9. And the Kansas Senate, Kansas and Kansas House are both, I believe, supermajorities for the Republican Party. The governor is Democrat. I don't know the specificities of that yay nay breakdown. I'm guessing it was pretty gosh darn close to party lines. But suffice to say, the Republicans are for this bill and the Democrats are against it. And I'm going to kind of give my libertarian opinion on why I am against this bill. But before I get into that, I do want to show you some clips here of how it was covered in the media. Here's our first headline, and you can see this is from the kwch.com website. It's a little bit cut off, but down on the bottom there, KCTV is also kind of cited there for writing this article by Sarah Motter. Anyway, just to read the headline states, Kansas Senate approves bill that would restrict ability to limit public gatherings, which would, it's like anti-lockdown is what that's kind of saying. So it's a double negative there. It's restricting the ability to limit public gatherings. So if I just read that title, I would say that sounds like a great idea. As far as what I think I would like a bill to do, a bill would say that the government should not be restricting our public ability to gather, because that's a constitutional right. Now I've pulled another headline here, and you can see that this is from kcur.org 89.3. It also states NPR on there. And then as you look at where the article would subsequently be written below the screenshot, this is written by the Kansas Reflector. The author is Morgan Chilson. And the title states, Kansas legislature ends power of county health officials to ban public gatherings during outbreaks. Now that's obviously a very scary headline. This idea of being protected from outbreaks and this idea, why would you not want health officials to be able to help people not get sick during an outbreak? So that definitely pulls on some emotional strings. It kind of definitely makes you raise an eyebrow of just saying, why would you not want health officials to, engage in quarantines during medical outbreaks? Like you don't have to be a doctor to not know that, and we're going to talk about that later. But there's that headline. Okay, so just to give my opinion, I am against Kansas Senate Bill 29. Now, I'm going to try to explain this to you guys as best I can. I want to state that I don't necessarily know if this would be considered an unconstitutional bill in terms of the Kansas Constitution. So I'm not arguing about why this should be unconstitutional or not. I'm not claiming that this isn't a perfectly legal bill for the Kansas Constitution to pass. I'm just saying I disagree with it. And I will also kind of say that it kind of in general benefits me, because when I was reading those headlines, I talked about the first headline being like, oh yeah, I don't like the idea of the government telling me that I can't go publicly gather when I want to. So this idea of taking that power away from local officials kind of it benefits me if you think about at least the COVID politics, where given that I'm in a red state, they're probably not going to do the lockdown things the way that the blue states did, because that's how the political divide caused that to go down. But yeah, I'm against it. And what else? Okay. And trying to explain why I am against this bill, I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about trying to answer the question about why am I not for this bill. So almost like a double negative there. But why am I not in favor of this bill? As someone who probably would be more right-leaning on this, what happened in terms of this right-left divide, like I talked about? You've got a Republican supermajority passing this bill over a Democratic governor's veto, and yet it's a bill that the, quote, Republican-leaning libertarian likes. So why am I not for this bill? Okay. Well, I guess to start with, it's what I would think of as growing the government. Now, I understand that it took power away from local government, but what it did is it did that through a larger government. It was the bullies that did that. It wasn't. I practice these things and I kind of go through them fairly well, and then I hit the points kind of on the nose, which is fine. It'll keep the videos shorter. But to the naysayers about that, like when I think of like a department like DOJ, which in general I like, and you would think that Republicans like, you also kind of appreciate the irony that it grows the government in order to subtract from the government. And you can, tell me about how, oh, well, this department's temporary, and Elon Musk is volunteering for it, so it doesn't cost you any money. And I think to myself, well, what happens when it's, not temporary, like every single government edition ever? And then the next guy does want a salary. So in general, I'm just against the idea of growing the government. And like I was trying to get at earlier, I do feel like this grows the government because it's the state government that is growing. So if you kind of think of like the government layers, like almost think of them like when sometimes people talk about the poor little people and how we're supposed to help them and against the evil capitalist, and they talk about the government coming in there. The way that they view it, in my opinion, it's like a big fish in a little pond eating all the minnows, right? And that's the evil capitalist corporation for the left people that get pissed off about that. And then what's their solutions? Their solution is for the government to come in there. The government is now a bigger fish that eats what was once used to be the bigger fish, or the biggest fish. You get my point, is that the minnows still have a big fish in a little pond at the end of it. And that's kind of like what I'm getting at, is that I don't feel like this is actually limiting government. I believe that it is growing the government. And as much as you can or cannot agree or disagree with DOJ, personally, I like the concept of, I really do think our government needs somebody auditing this government, sort of thing. It also inherently also grows the government. Next. Well, I talked about that. Gives the power going upwards. And it's kind of like if the federal government said that we are now in charge of education. Like if the Board of Education became a true federal entity that oversees all of the state entities below it, you could kind of see how like that's inherently, there's somebody in charge, right? It's just, is it Washington, D.C.? Is it the state capital? Is it the local school board in that educational sense? So I guess this was another bullet point that I had about that, is that it just kind of makes me worried about this idea about like state level lockdowns, where the idea is, oh, there's an outbreak in Wichita, and it really is so bad that the Kansas legislature is like, we need to shut down the entire state. And meanwhile, I'm thinking to myself, if it's that bad, maybe you just need to shut down Wichita or Sedgwick County, like, and I'm not saying that the state couldn't do that, but what if it's not that bad and the state says, oh no, we're going to do that to you anyway? And Sedgwick County and the people of Wichita are like, no, we don't like that. But the simple truth is they've got people, they got representatives and from all over Kansas that are making these decisions. That's how the state level kind of works. I mean, certainly with the passing of the bill, but then once you hand it off to the bureaucrats, all you're doing is letting what is likely some resident of Topeka, although they might work remotely, I don't know, some government bureaucrat make decisions for you that might not have anything to do with your location. So that was a worry of mine. There's this idea of state level lockdowns. I also don't like this bill because I think it sets a nasty precedence. I already kind of alluded to this idea of if it was something about education, like do you want education to be decided at the state level, the federal level, or the local level? It just sets a nasty precedence on how you should be managing things that I think the concept of a medical quarantine, when you think about them doing something like that in a hospital, they might do it on a floor. They might do it for a patient. Then they might do it for a floor. Then they might do it for an entire wing. Then they might do it for that wing and those employees. Like a bit before you get to the whole hospital or the whole county or the whole state or anything like that. So, yeah. All right. So I guess I've kind of like explained why I'm against it at this point. So I guess I'll try to again, really try to hammer out to anyone who disagrees with me. So like to the naysayers, like these would people be, I guess, people that would call themselves Republicans or conservatives and maybe some libertarians out there. Certainly, at least as far as the record of vote, it was the Republican Party that is for this bill. I could understand why there'd be some libertarians out there that are for this, especially with what I think of these idealistic anarchists. They would be for this bill because they would be like, look, we're getting legislation passed that reduces the government. And then their idea is then we're going to come back and then we're going to get the federal government to make it illegal for Kansas to engage in lockdowns without the federal government's permission. And then we're going to finally get the federal government to give up that power. And one, I don't think it's going to work like that. If it did, it would take a while. And three, I've already talked about the idea of giving more power to a larger government that is further removed from the situation. So it doesn't even sound like anarchy. It just seems kind of like a fool's gold on those values for people that like to talk game about conservative, small government. This is not conservative small government. This grows government. On my notes here, I have talking about like I mentioned anarchy. Sometimes in the libertarian world, we talk about minarchy. And so I'll just define minarchy as basically these three principles. You want to keep government as small as possible. You want to keep government as local as possible. And we're going to have to acknowledge a definition of government. The only purpose for government to exist is to preserve the longevity of that society or that culture. And the way that government does that is by it forces you to sacrifice your freedoms for safety. That's the only thing government can do. It can give you safety by taking away your freedom. And if you think of government as being a necessary evil, or if you don't like that, you can think of government within the real world, where, as Shakespeare said, I think the only thing that's guaranteed is death and taxes. The idea is that we have government. So unless you want to just start anarchy, you're going to have to kind of play by certain rules. So playing by the rules that government is going to exist, how do you want it to exist? And like I said, on the most small and local level possible. And like I said, and then what does government do? Government is there for your safety. like when you think of a law like buckle your seatbelt or you get a ticket, I think it's the stupidest law I've ever heard of. In fact, there was, I think I saw a thing on Facebook about, I forget the person's name. I'll just say John Smith. And it's like John Smith Day, and he was some guy that fought this law, refused to wear a seatbelt, and eventually died in a car accident. And the government throws it up there, during on the little boards while you're driving on the highway for, Kansas National Wear Your Seatbelt Day, and be like, hey, like, don't get a ticket, get there alive, wear a seatbelt. And I'm like, that's, I don't know, true. I'm pro wearing your seatbelt, but I just don't think it's a crime. And they kind of advertise it like, see, you have to wear your seatbelt or else. And I'm thinking to myself, no, John Smith did exactly what he said he was going to do. He told you that you cannot force him to drive like that. You can only punish him. That's the only thing you can ever do, is punish him for it. Even if you take away his license, he could still drive illegally. You know what I mean? Like, all you're doing is you are defining crime, creating more crime. You didn't save his life. And if you need that law to know to wear a seatbelt, well, I think you're kind of an idiot. I'm not saying I want you eliminated from the gene pool, but if you're stupid enough to drive around without wearing a seatbelt, you're kind of an idiot. And if you want to talk about why parents should have to buckle in their kids, you can talk about that too. But as far as what you as an adult do, it's a whole nother thing. And that was kind of a long rant there. But to bring it back to the concept of what does government do, is it provides safety by sacrificing freedom. The whole point of that law was to remove your freedom of whether or not you want to wear a seatbelt or not. And so we know from the science, I'm sorry I had to just say that, but let's just be honest, and I talked about this right at the beginning, you don't have to be a doctor to know that the concept of quarantines are a valid medical tool for limiting the spread of disease. Like, we know that's true. Now, I'm not here to argue about global economic lockdowns for multiple years. I'm not here to be like, well, they said it just takes 2 weeks and then 2 months later, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying that we don't want to go so extreme as to say quarantine should be illegal because freedom. Like, sorry, government exists. Like, I hate it as much as everyone else. So how do you want it to exist? And like I said, at the smallest and local level. And what this does is it takes that away. And I guess with my final argument being, then what in the hell is the bleepity point of having a county health official and all of these people if they don't have the sort of power that, if you're going to have a county health official that's not in charge of the county health, what are they in charge of? Oh, well, they do blah, 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 blah. I'm like, right. So clearly they're qualified. Ideally, if they're not, fire them and let's not even have them. Like, well, what is the point? So anyway, I think I'm going to go ahead and do my outro. It's been long enough. Thanks for listening. Yeah, I kind of like paying attention to some of the local stuff. Given my state house run back in 2024, should I want to do it again in 2026? I'm kind of paying attention because it's good for me to, talk about things as if I kind of know what I'm talking about. So, next episode will be in June. And what am I going to talk about? I don't know, although I have been really trying to think, and I talked about this in my last video, about balancing the triforce between the consumer and the business and the government, and how those checks and balances have to lay out between that. Because like I said, in general, I hate regulation on business because why shouldn't I? If you're going to call yourself a libertarian, you got to figure that out. But if you're also going to call yourself a minarchist, you're going to have to figure that out. And you're also going to have to, deal with the concepts that anytime you do something, you are inherently sacrificing freedom for safety. So does it actually provide safety, and is it worth that much freedom? Is kind of the balancing act. And yeah, I get why a school board might want to be like, hey, look, we got a couple of measles outbreaks. Let's just Can we shut down Jefferson Elementary School for a day, see what happens? Maybe the whole week. Who knows? I get it. It's a thumb up the butt in a bad sort of way. If you got kids and you're trying to like figure it out. But I think that's enough rambling given how far we have gone off track at this point. So until next video, bye.